Greetings, hello, and welcome everyone. Welcome to DevChatter. My name is Brendan, and this is obviously the DevChatter live stream. I want to take a moment to welcome you. If you are one of our newer viewers, welcome to the stream. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We are going to be doing some code here, as is our normal thing on the stream. We like to work in... Most of our code is C#, but we do dabble into JavaScript frequently, and we'll jump into Python, and really are open to any language that we want to do something specific with. So if you have questions, if you're a newer programmer or anything like that, don't worry about that. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Our community is very friendly and is not going to, be like, oh man, I can't believe you didn't know blah, like, what? No, it's a very friendly, audio is bad, choppy. Hang on, let me try again. How's the audio now? Is that any better? It sounds fine to you? Okay. So maybe Guy needs to reload? It is not on my end. Okay, sounds good, thanks. Must be... try refreshing the page, Guy. So, anyway, let's go ahead and... So I like to give a little bit of time in the beginning to let people sort of roll into the stream, because we do have a lot of people that... they get the notification, they see it in Discord, they see it in Twitter or something like that, and end up joining the stream. So if you are one of those people that is just coming in, don't worry, we're going to get started soon. I always like to have like this buffer in the beginning where people are going to stroll in, that way no one misses the explanation of what we're going to be working on. So... what can I cover while we wait? So, things I want to mention. If you are one of the people that is already following us, thank you, and glad to have you as part of the community. If you are someone who has not yet clicked that follow button, be sure to do so, because it is the best way to get notified when our stream goes live. Additionally, I'm going to toss out links to our Discord, which is a wonderful community of developers that are interested in stuff. So if you want to chat with me or anyone else outside of the stream, the Discord is the best way to do that. And then I will also toss out links to our GitHub and our YouTube, which are places where you can find the stuff we have done here before on the stream. So the GitHub has just lots of code that we've just, put together here on the stream, and the YouTube is actually full archives going back to the beginning of 2018, when I started streaming regularly on this channel. So welcome everyone. T-Lux, you have a fantastic question that I actually kind of want to dive into before I there you go, the Bobo NL. And I'm guessing that NL is the Netherlands, but I don't know because there's other possible NL interpretations. But welcome, and T-Lux, I love your question. I kind of want to jump into that. So, whiteboard anxiety is a giant problem. First off, I will say that it is not a good idea to do like whiteboarding interview questions, I assume is what you're referring to. I don't think it's a great concept. The like, let's sketch something on a whiteboard, unless, yeah, Blizzards of the Coast, you love that, huh? So glad someone's reading the text on this, that they put some great effort into. It's just far enough away from anything to avoid lawsuits, I think. And by that I mean, what? There's clearly no relation to these things than any other things. So whiteboard interviews are a silly beast in the programming world. If the concept of the whiteboard interview is not coding, but is instead like, let's talk general architectures of objects, and you're just gonna like draw boxes and you're not worried about like UML discussions, it's like, how would you architect this thing? And it's like, okay, well, I'd have like this, SQSQ here and this over here that's running, as an AWS Lambda that would take, like if you're talking like at high level discussions of how systems would work together, yeah, that is totally fine to be drawing on a whiteboard. It's because it doesn't matter, like, it lets you put something down that would be a discussion of like, how would you architect something? And it could be a discussion of like, well, what have you built before? Like, what types of components have you put together, and how did they communicate? Could be a valid thing to ask someone in an interview without getting too into the specifics. And so I could see that being a reasonable thing to ask in Whiteboard. If someone's actually talking like code, that's a really bad idea, because the programmers aren't writing, like, anyone that actually creates software. Like, I don't write my code on a whiteboard ever. When I'm actually writing the software, I'm going to type it into something. Now, some people might scribble it on a notepad, they might write it on a whiteboard, but they're not, like, that's not a lot of people's regular process. For me, I'm mostly going to type it on a keyboard somewhere. So if they're good with me typing, that would be fine. They wanted you to write a function code in a screen share using Visual Studio Code. So that's actually much easier than a whiteboard. And there's still going to be a lot of anxiety about that, because you're nervous that you're going to make a mistake and you're going to type things. But the positive is, at least at least having you in an editor means that you've got the safety net of your normal circumstance of, if you make a typo, you're going to get squiggly line and it's going to show you that you messed that up. And if you've got a syntax error again, it's going to show you that ends up happening. Regarding that, I would say the best thing that I could give you as advice for something to remind yourself of in a whiteboard interview style thing like that is, from having been on the other side, because I've done a lot of interviewing of developers. I've worked as like the hiring manager for multiple software consulting organizations, and when I would interview people, I usually wanted to see either some code that they had done before that they could tell me about, or I wanted to see, especially for junior programmers, I wanted to see them actually write something so that I could make sure, like, yeah, you've got some of these like basic concept stuff. What I was never looking at is, did their code compile? I didn't care if you got nervous and your code didn't compile, if you made typos, if you made syntax errors. I cared nothing about that. All that ever really matters is, do you generally understand the concept that you are trying to build? If you are nervous and make syntax errors or make mistakes, you're off by one, it doesn't, I never have I ever worried about that. I expect that someone that is in an interview setting, regardless of whether or not they're writing code or just answering questions, is nervous. Like, that's just like the standard. Like, I just assume you're nervous and you're going to make mistakes, and every single person is going to. I can't say that every interviewer is going to be the same as I was on that, but if the interviewer is actually trying to find good people, that's what they're looking for. Because it doesn't matter if your developers get nervous in an interview, because I don't interview people while they're doing their code for work. So those whiteboarding things were meant to see if your thought process. Yes, exactly. Yes, precisely. I want to see how you think through it. So I like the idea is, like, was your thought to break out a method for something? Were you thinking, okay, I need to create an object for this? Did you think, hey, this could be solved with, this? You're like, basically, were you thinking about the problem? And that's kind of what you're looking for. And those types of coding things, I will say, I only ever used for the junior programmers. I wouldn't use for someone that had been coding for years, because I expect that anyone that's been coding for years can do a lot of those things, and they could show me some of their code and just be like, yeah, here's some code I wrote. Okay, cool. Yep. Like, that's about it. We can teach you how to code, or yes, exactly. Yes. So Jason is correct. One of the other huge things that Jason just hit on there, which is massive, especially for like when interviewing the interns or junior programmers or anything like that, and really, I guess anybody for that matter. Something that has never mattered to me is, do you even know the language that we work in? So, for example, if I'm hiring for a C# position and you know Java, it's like, okay, syntax is going to throw you a whole bunch of times, but I generally know that you're going to be able to learn the language. If you're coming from Python, you're going to be able to learn the language. If you've done a lot of work in PHP, it's fine. You're going to be able to learn the language. I don't care what your background is, you can pick up a language. Every developer can. Hey, Greendolf, and welcome. I should say welcome to anyone else that has shown up and said hi at the beginning. We're going to jump into this in a second, but I really like this question. I really want to talk about it because interviewing is very significant to a lot of us. We all have to deal with it, both from the idea of we need to bring more people onto our team, and then we also are frequently having to join other teams. So that goes both for the learners that end up in our stream, as well as right now I know that a lot of people have had layoffs in their companies because of economic issues wherever you are in the world. How's Basuk? Welcome. Thank you very much for the tier 1 resub. Welcome. So when you switch from C# jobs to Java jobs, it wasn't the language that you struggled with. It was Maven. Yes, precisely. But even then, Greendolf, that's the idea that any tooling, any other stuff that you have to figure out is part of that. So like even just the switch from someone coming from, I don't know, would it be a weird one, like Eclipse to Visual Studio, for example, or further jumps, like those should not be those are not the barrier to hiring someone. That's like, yes, you need to wait until their brain reconfigures to the new language and new tool set, and then boom, they're golden. I don't hire people to work for a week. I hire them to work for years. So I should not be worried about a week or even a month of learning the new way of doing things because you've transitioned languages or whatever. That is completely irrelevant, especially exactly. Yes. Guy Royce is correct. Yes, you hire someone that you're going to keep long term and be able to do great stuff for you. And if I just need someone that knows let's say I'm building an application and I need to connect it to Azure AD, and no one on my team knows how to do that because they haven't done it before, I can, as Guy puts it, rent in someone that has that skill and just basically have them come in, set that up on our project, and move along. Because there are enough independent people out there that I can just be like, hey, can I bring you on for a small contract, just set this up in our application, get it all worked out, all the kinks and everything, and they'll come in and do that and then move on, and cool, yay. And I'm probably going to pay a premium to just bring that person on temporarily, but then my team can look at what was built, figure it out, and maintain it going forward. But no one had to figure it out. Now that's a very small scale example. You'd probably just figure that out in house, but if your team really is like a front end team and really doesn't, and you're going to connect it with ASP.NET Core and you don't know the middleware that connects it to that, then that's fine. Just bring someone in. It's okay. Because it could save you the effort. And maybe you don't have the capacity to absorb that at the moment. So, but good stuff. Welcome, everyone. I think I've given everyone enough time to get in here. So welcome, Greendolf and Guy, Bobo, Telox, Jason, and anyone else that is lurking in chat. If you're lurking, I assume you don't want to be called out, so I won't say your name. But welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started. So we are working on the EverCraft Kata. Fuel Snable, hello, good evening. And the EverCraft Kata, link down there, by the way, in case you're interested in taking a look at it yourself, is the creation of George Walters II and Guy Royce. Guy Royce being one of the people that you'll see talking in chat while we're here. And those two, I believe, are the ones that created this for a workshop that they started about a decade ago. And it is designed to be... Zalvixidian, you've been here a long time. You were here a long time ago, and I think I tried to say your name. But I forget what it was, and I remember that you gave me some correction to help try to say it. But anyway, so we started this kata actually on a previous stream, and we got a good ways done. But I'm going to walk through basically the requirements that we've set up so far. We took we made some assumptions based on this. We did not ask Guy; he wasn't around, and even if he were, we would still make our own assumptions on it. Because these are the instructions that we've got, and in theory, I guess we would go talk to a customer if this were like the actual business application. But with a kata, you make do with what you can. Okay, so the EverCraft Kata is we're going to build out the domain model. So that means like essentially these are like the core classes for working with this code base for an MMORPG called EverCraft, and it is for the company Blizzards of the Coast. And we are going to be following along. Now, I don't have a pairing partner over there or up there or anywhere else. So, chat, you're going to fill in as my pairing partner and discuss with me as we work on this. And we are going to be test driving our code. So, we decided to do this in C# and .NET Core, as that is what is currently our standard on this channel. And I know I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream. We do other languages too, and don't let syntax ever be a barrier for you in enjoying or seeing how code is written, because we can all understand the other languages even if the syntax doesn't match up. It's just figuring out what something means. And if you do have questions about code that you see on the screen, feel free to ask, and either I or someone else in the channel will probably jump in and let you know what's going on with it. Okay, so model is the data structure, right? So some people say model, so the word model can be a few different things. So because it was prefaced with domain model, so model, the way that we describe it in programming, we usually say model when we mean like the model of some kind of structure. So it's like the shape of it. So modeling data, so a data model, for example, is the structure of how we store it in the code. So that might be like, if my data model could be a few classes that are going to end up mapping to some tables in a database, or, you know, maybe in the file system, or maybe it's the data model is how we transfer data through an API to another system. Those are data models. The domain model is how we are structuring the code in what's called the domain. So that's like the core of our application and how the logic works. So model in this case really just means like shape. But you're right. If someone had just say a model without domain, they probably mean a data model. So, and okay, so you have all public. Is that preference? So T-Lux, that depends on on what you're building. So in this case, I've mostly done public only because that's what defaults when I create the snippets for the objects. If I were following like direct domain-driven design on this, I would probably make most of these properties public for the getter so that other things can read the properties off of these objects, but probably private on the setter, or maybe protected depending. But I usually default to private until a child in an inheriting class needs access. When you do that, it usually means that you're making methods that cause the actions to happen. So we were at a point in this where I wanted to do some restructuring of how our code works so that we can better handle the next set of requirements that we're getting. So yes, all of these I would have be public, and I would probably add private setters to a number of these when working with it. Now, the interesting thing on that is that because I'm not calling it, you'll notice that this text turned darker, because I think strength is only ever being set in a constructor. So I can actually remove that and say it's read-only, and it only gets set in the constructor. SioKid, welcome. Thank you for that follow. Much appreciated, and welcome to the stream. Public attribute health get... Yes. Exactly, Bobo. That is precisely how it would work. Is you do that. I'm not going to worry about it right now because this is a kata and not a long-lived application. So a lot of those those types of decisions, I don't recommend trying to dig too much into when you're doing a kata unless that's the focus of the kata. So if you were doing a kata designed to teach domain-driven design, for example, then I would recommend you focus on those kinds of details. In this one, I think the focus is more on interactions of the objects than on the encapsulation of specifically domain objects. Although I could be wrong. I can ask Guy about that. Drew Kill, thank you very much for that follow. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so where were we? So let's walk through our requirements. So first off, our requirements are that our character, we have to be able to make him or her we have to be able to get his or her name, and I guess, or their name. We need to be able to set an alignment, and good, evil, and neutral are our alignment choices. I believe when we set that up, yes, we created an alignments enumeration that has evil, neutral, and good as the choices. We created properties for armor class that defaults to 10 and a hit points that are set to 5 by default. So we have hit points, which we've gotten a little bit more complex than that original spec already, because some other requirements have made us do that. But we have hit points right here and armor class right here. And so our character can attack another character. So when we do that, we said roll a 20-sided die, and we said don't code the die. So we interpreted that as don't even write code for rolling dice. Just pass in a number. So like, since we're just creating the domain model and not like the game engine, where the game engine might be what is rolling dice and things like that, we interpreted this as the character objects are going to receive whatever the roll was from some other system. So is there a reason you hard set all the ints on the alignment enum and that you started with 1? Yes, Bobo, there are a couple of reasons why we did that. So first off, I should mention that I have a video on our YouTube channel in our DevChatter Basics playlist, which I linked to the channel over there in chat. And in the DevChatter Basics series, I talk about like some like essential core concepts of programming. So it's like the basic stuff that people should definitely know about in like C#. And I talk about enums and how they work, and as well as like changing types and things like that. I don't go super in depth because I wanted to keep the video kind of short, and I intend to do like deeper dives into these at some point. But one of the reasons to set these values is that if you do not in C#, it will make that first one 0. And a lot of people wonder, well, okay, what's wrong with it defaulting to 0? And the idea is that when you receive data from places, a lot of times you will get a default value of 0. So if I just create an alignment object and I don't set its value is 0. Kind of like if I just created an integer in C# and I don't set its value is 0. And the problem I have with that is I don't want to just say that evil, for example, is the default value. I want there to be a set value. So exactly. So as Greendorf says, I could set a none on this or something like that. So I could set none as a 0 value, if that makes sense. And then I could validate and say, make sure it doesn't have none. But usually the validation that I put on them is I will say that it has to be a valid one. And you can actually, so you can write code with enums in C# that will verify that whatever the value is matches with part of the set. So that's one of the reasons I don't want the 0. So the 0 should, if you are going to have a 0, make sure that it's like a none or a default or something like that kind of value, and don't just let them start there. The other reason is if these get stored anywhere, you want to make sure that you set the value so that no developer comes along in the future and goes, you know what? We should have these it's not there. We should have these in alphabetical order. And so they sort the list. And if I didn't have the numbers specified, they would then have changed the values. But since I specified the numbers, I don't care how they want to reorder it. Those numbers stay consistent. So if someone wants to change those numbers, they need to have some kind of validation. And yes, so the other option, if you were going to have a 0, is I would set it to like unset or unknown or none or something along those lines. So magic refers to magic numbers. Wouldn't constants be a better choice for magic values? Just a heads up, if you are going to do something like this, I don't think that there are many developers that would complain about these being set to, we'll call them magic numbers. And the reason why is that an enum created in this way essentially is like creating a constant in the language, right? When I'm running this code, I'm not changing the values of what evil, good, and neutral are. These are these are like the constants essentially. So instead of creating 3 constants and assigning them here, I just do this. Why does the enum inherit from byte instead of int? Drew Kill, because we were talking about it on stream and we were discussing the fact that we don't technically need an int, and this could be a byte just as easily, and it does not actually make a difference. So a byte is just going to be a number that can only go up, that's going to go from 0 to 255. And in this case, it's going to be like no signed values. So by default, you can't put a negative in here, and it has to be a fairly small number, and it doesn't really matter. Now, if you're thinking that I did this for space savings, no, not really. So yeah, C# does not really save space when you do that. So, let's put that back. Okay, so but great question, Drew Quill. I'm glad you noticed that we did switch it to a byte. We did that just because we were like, oh, then you can't even put in negative numbers, so we don't have to worry about that case. It won't evaluate to it. And yes, Greendorf is correct. It is a constant that has a type and can be used in generic, so why not? Bytes often get aligned to the system pointer size anyway. Exactly. Yep, what Greendorf just mentioned. So because of the fact that in a lot of circumstances for how you're going to use a byte in C#, the storage space for a byte and an int is actually going to be the same. So I did not really save any for, like, there are circumstances when using C#. So like if you do care about performance, you can write C# that will care about performance and will store the data the way that you expect. So you can define the exact bits of an object that you want to store in C#. But yes, exactly. And so the idea, like, yes, what Greendorf has mentioned, if you're getting into that, you better be in some really high performance situation or some, like, I have really limited resources situation, because when you get to that point, I am certain that is not your bottleneck. I mean, I guess it could be. And hey, Exclusive PR, welcome. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so we're just going over what we've set up already. So we created the ability for an attack. Now, this is part of the code that I want to restructure. So I want to specify that. So if you're going to say, like, why'd you create it this way? I'm going to say, because the code, like, as written, like, doesn't need to be complicated when you're walking through a kata. So try not to overthink it. Just step through and at some point make the conscious decision as a developer that, hey, I want to restructure this. So don't try to build code the way that you think it needs to be, because if you do that as a developer, and like we all do this, we will make the solution too complicated. We will build like the infinitely flexible, like, you know, amazing combat system. It's like, no, you just need a basic attack and that's it. Can you ask a quick question that's quite in-depth and it's not related to what I'm currently working on? I don't want to get terribly distracted, but I mean, you can always ask the question. I might say that that's a topic that people should have over on Discord instead of here in the chat. But I mean, you can always ask. I guess I don't know what the question is. Okay, so we have the ability to attack. So the way that we attack is we say, for the character, we're going to have them attack a target, and then this is the roll that they made elsewhere in the system. Remember that the kata said, don't worry about the roll, it's going to come in from elsewhere. And then we're going to check to see if our roll plus our strength modifier is greater than the target's armor class, then it's a hit. And if we did hit them, we are then going to do damage equal to 1 plus our strength modifier. And if the roll happened to be a 20, then we are going to double the damage, essentially, which I think is the way we're supposed to do it, though I wasn't totally clear on the instructions on that piece. And then we're going to take the target's hit points and subtract the amount of damage. Now, this is the part I don't like. So the way that this code is written, it is actually... it is our character object that we're currently in, this one, right here that is targeting another one, and it's actually changing the values of the target. So that's what I want to reverse. I want to change it so that you are applying the damage to yourself. So I kind of want to pull this into its own method or something like that, because I don't feel like this one should be adjusting the property of that one, if that makes sense. And I think the one that should determine whether or not it gets hit is the other object. So I kind of want to make is hit by or something like that. So we might do some refactoring as the start of this instead of continuing on to the next piece. And yes, so T-Locks, the roll is a 20-sided dice. So that it is a D20 there. So 20 is the max on the roll itself. We are adding the modifier after the fact, so that is why. So you can get above 20, but only from the modifier. The roll itself is going to be a 1 to 20 range. Okay, so exclusive PR, I'm going to read your question now. Is it difficult to set up a web API in an MVC project and have the auth sitting on the web API that the MVC uses? The web API and the MVC project are separate ones. You can, so keep in mind, within a single ASP.NET application, you can have both controllers that are designed to display like views in like the standard MVC approach, as well as have a separate set of controllers that are designed to be the API that return back essentially like, say, JSON data to the front-end JavaScript that is running in your application. So way off topic, so I won't dig you too far into this, but yes, I would recommend, if you're going to take that approach, if you need to, you can make them as two separate projects and you can have them communicate with each other, but that gets into weird security things. Whereas if it is the same application, the security check is like the communication is much easier to have happen. But you might be in a circumstance where you need to separate it for some performance reason or something like that. But most likely, if you're asking this question, you probably need to just essentially, you can set up a separate set of endpoints for your API controllers, and they're basically just going to be like maybe under like /API or something like that, or you can put it wherever you want. But essentially, those controllers would be a separate set. Welcome, US Johnny. Thank you for that follow, much appreciated. And is there anything out of the box that does this? Yeah, ASP.NET Core. It just straight up does it. Just out of the box. You can set those up. And yes, Zalvix, you are totally correct. That is part of the refactoring that we're going to be doing now. So let's get started on the refactoring once I confirm a couple of other things that I want to walk through here. So the character can be damaged, so we did that. The character has ability scores. So I will talk about those really fast. So these are the ability scores. They have default values that come in through the constructor. There's some weirdness with how we do that I want to get fixed. But we essentially created this attribute type. And it is a struct that is a wrapper around the concept of having a value and a modifier. So in Dungeons and Dragons and other games like that, any D20 game, for example, this concept has been around for a long time. Other games use similar concepts as well. And the idea is that sometimes you have numbers that have multiple meanings, like the number itself is in some way affect. So this sort of gives you like partials. So the idea is that if I have a strength of 10, that is considered normal, and it's just regular. So there's no modifier either increasing or decreasing the values of the things that I do. If my strength were a 9, that is a weaker number, and I would have a modifier of -1. Whereas if I have a 12, for example, that would be a +1. But an 11 and a 10 are both considered normal, despite the fact that 11 is obviously higher than 10. They're the same modifier. And so that's essentially what this calculation right here does, is that is saying how to convert from a value that is from 3 to like 20 and turn it into negative numbers to positive numbers that are being used as modifiers. C Films, welcome. Glad you're doing well. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back to the stream. So Drew Kill some reasons why you might have a separate API application for your MVC site is if the for one reason, if the if, for example, you're having multiple applications or internal applications or something like that communicate with the API, you might store it somewhere else. You might not have it on the website itself. It'd be really weird circumstances, which is why I'm suggesting that you just put them on the same one. But it is possible to have that kind of thing come up. It's categorization in essence. The modifier is yes, exactly, Simon. That's a good description of it. Good evening, Renee. Welcome. Okay, so that's our attributes. That's our code. We have a number of tests which we'll look at as we work on them. For now, let me just run all the tests, confirm that all the code that we've got so far is working, and then we'll jump in right about where we left off with a little bit of refactoring as well. Jason Williams, thank you very much for following the stream. I guess that means that you've enjoyed your time here so far and that we've had some good discussions. Yay, fireworks. We built that silly little fireworks animation on stream. It was quite fun, actually, building that. But if you are not someone that has been to our stream a lot, fully expect that we will have conversations on anything related to programming while we code stuff. So we like chatting about all kinds of things related to software development, programming, and just other interesting things. Okay, so did I show the results of that? So as you can see, all of our tests currently pass. So that was what I ran there. So that's our modifiers explained in detail. So yeah, if you had a score of 1, you'd have a -5. If you have a score of 20, it's a +5. But you'll see that 10 is a 0, and so is 11, and a 12 and a 13 are +1, a 14 and a 15 are +2, and that's how the modifiers work. And essentially, we just encapsulated that in an object. So you set whatever the score is, and it'll then also make available the modifier value. Mayday, welcome. Thanks for that follow. Much appreciated. Welcome to the stream. You stream Magic the Gathering, but you didn't know Twitch had a coding category. Well, welcome, Jason. So we used to actually have some programming categories. We had one a long time ago. When Twitch did their restructuring of all the categories, they moved us into science and technology, which is a real bummer. So we've actually been doing the stream here for full timing, correct, right now? Schedule's Monday. That's UTC. That is not correct right now. That schedule is off by an hour. It's not adjusting for daylight savings time, I don't think. Anyway, so the timing should be earlier on each of those. So actually, if you wanted to do that, the problem is I've got the schedule wrong. What you would do is you'd say something like this. No. Okay, so that message I think means that our API key with Google I think needs to be reset. CFilms. So no worries. You can find the schedule down below the stream also. Yeah, it just means that we just need to reset our OAuth token with them, I think. Okay, so a character can gain experience when attacking. Add the strength modifier to the attack roll. Double the strength modifier on critical hits. Minimum damage is always 1. Add dexterity modifier to the armor class, and add constitution modifier to hit points. Okay, so that is the stuff that we were just building. Did I get all of those tested? Just that. Adjust hit points by constitution modifier. Okay, so yes, we have some basic tests of all of these things. So let's jump in and start doing some of that refactoring that I was talking about. So, and CFilms, that's the project we're working on right there. If you want to test things, we also have games and things on the bot as well. No project calendar, hello, or anything like that. I think we might have ping. No ping. But you can do this. Just type in a color name and it changes all the lights on the stream. And it does hex codes as well. Okay, so is hit. So let's move this into another. Let's move this onto the object. I want to move this onto the target. So let's make a little method. So we're at the point where we have tests of what we've built so far. So right now, you don't need to. Yeah, you don't need to put the exclamation point for changing these colors. Just any color will do. Just type it in, it changes it. Public bool is hit by and int modified role. Okay, so we're going to do this, and we're going to return back essentially this value. So this is the modified role right here. And instead of going with target, we're going to do self. So return back is the modified role greater than our armor class. And there is our is hit by, which has now been put on the object itself. So you now say, am I hit by that role? Instead of them saying, hey, I hit you, it's me replying, yes, you hit me. Bagra67, welcome. Thanks for that follow. Much appreciated. Ooh, Alice Blue, that's nice. And Guy, you are, yes, black is the funny one because they disappear. And people have on many occasions managed to make those lights black, and I'll be like, oh, dang it, did that die? And I'll think that it has like, that maybe I've been tricked many times on stream into thinking that my overlay died. And it's really just someone typed in black and I didn't notice. So, yep, it works. You really can do that to me. Okay, so at this point, we can now say so target dot is hit by that role, and we don't access their armor class. So what's cool about that is I no longer access the target's armor class. So that makes it possible for me to start getting to the point where when people asked in the beginning of the stream, they asked about the properties and they said, they're all public. Should they be public or should they be private or protected? And the short answer is, when you're creating things and you're like, if you are building them from the ground up like this and you're doing the TDD style approach, don't do that at first, because you might be building such a simple thing that you don't need to really do it, and you could just be modifying this. But when we start doing this, as we got into attacking, it's like, oh, okay, so the way that we're building this, it is getting a little bit weird to be accessing the other one's properties, so we can adjust that. TDD is test-driven development C-films, which is the idea that you are testing your code as you build it, essentially, and you're allowing that does not mean that you need to test every single thing that you ever create and every single circumstance. What it means is that you're, like, at least the way when I say it, I mean you're writing tests that are what help you decide what you're going to write. And part of the reason for that is it makes you think from the perspective of the caller of the code instead of from the perspective of the creator of the code. So you think, how would I want to, run this code, not how do I want to build it? And it gets you focused a little bit differently. It also forces you to build in some other structures as well. So if you build with TDD, you can't make untestable code, for example, because you had it tested before you wrote. You had the test before you wrote it, so it has to follow along that. I'm not sure if you caught my question on testing, T-Lox. I may not have caught your question on testing. Any tips for writing robust tests? Practice. if you mean specifically for certain types of things, I can give you some suggestions there. I usually recommend that people. So this test is a little bit bigger than I intended, but generally speaking, I recommend. So like some of these, like this is bigger than I want. I need to do some cleanup on them, but I would generally tell people try to get it to the point where your test is like maybe 1 or 2 lines of code, and you can decide whether you want to even have this, like this initialization I've got here. Like, if not for the fact that I'm using the constitution value, I would have this somewhere else and would literally just be calling this one line as like a way of essentially having it as minimalistic as possible. So try to get a lot of reuse. Big thing that a lot of people don't get is they think, oh no, that's my test code, I don't need to worry about, that's the throw. It's like, no, your tests have to be maintained and maintainable. So the same rules that you apply to the code that's running in production, you need to apply to your tests. And the reason why is that as you change things, you're going to need to change your tests. So if you made your tests hard to change or difficult to adapt because of the way you wrote them, you're going to run into problems. So best suggestion I can make for how to do your tests better is just remember your test code. Your test code is real code. It's not like throwaway code. It's not different code. So you were in someone's stream the other day, and they had it set up where people could change the VS Code theme. C-Films, yeah, there's a number of people that did that with the theme. I'm not a big fan of that one. So we did colors a long time ago, like a couple of years ago on our stream, and then people were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do these code theme changes," and I was just kind of like, I still need to look at the editor. And I was like, my preference on looking at the editor definitely matters. And welcome SNV, welcome to the stream. I saw you show up, but I was talking about stuff, so I didn't want to like break my stride. No one's gonna break my stride. Ain't something gonna move along. Nobody gonna slow me down. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving. Man, that is like terrible old 80s music. Oh, that's the best. What is this inline data attribute? Okay, so Urban Blaster. I would love to. I will answer that question. So, for this, because it is important here. Oh, Zelvix, yeah, I've not had a Pepsi like thing running on the stream in a long time. So let's explain this. So in XUnit, you have what are called facts and theories. So a fact is just your test is a statement about something, and it isn't going to have any parameters that's specific to that one. A theory has some kind of input. So you can think of this like test cases in some other frameworks. So the idea is the inline data means I just hard-coded in some values here. I could put these somewhere else. I could pull them into a member object if I need to. So if I were going to reuse these same test cases for more than one test, and I just generally wanted to have like, here are my example characters, and I set up like example characters with example attributes, for example, for testing, I could create essentially a member that had like 20 characters, and I could just specify that as member data instead of inline data. And each of these values, so this one corresponds to constitution, and that one is the expected value. So essentially, this is just allowing me to parameterize my test method, is all that's doing. So hopefully that makes sense and answers your question. Have you tried Vim? C-Films, yes, I used Vim a long time ago. I'm not planning on using Vim on stream. I don't understand all you said because you're French, but your stream is really interesting. Bagra, well, welcome. If you do have questions where I said something too fast or you're just not sure, chime in. I will gladly help try to explain things. And so will other people in the chat as well. So English being my first language, I sometimes speed up a little bit too much. So I'll apologize in advance for that. The fun thing is, I will also say my French is terrible. My German is not bad, though my pronunciation is awful. And so then again, like, but I know that only because I've worked in Germany for some time, and you find out right quick how well people can understand you. The Germans could usually figure out what I was saying, but if anyone was not a native German speaker, then that's when you get into the fun, which is why I really feel for the non-native English speakers that are trying to communicate with other non-native English speakers, because if you have different accents, it's sometimes hard to figure out what the other person is saying. And yes, so I one of the nice things is that I am actually from a region of the world where our English, we say a lot of the sounds. So not all dialects of English do people pronounce all of the sounds that are in words, and sometimes they added, like there are sounds that are added that are not usually in the spelling. So like there are some parts like if you've ever heard someone say like the name, so I would say Louisa is a name, but you'll hear some dialects of English, they'll say like Louiser, and you'll go like, wait, there was an R on the end of that. There's no R in that spelling. Like, what did you just say? So like there are different dialects that, you know, none is better than the other, but for non-native speakers, it is probably easier if we match to the spelling a little bit better. So that is one of the things that is distinct in the region that I'm from, is we do say everything. So there are no sounds that we leave out, with a couple of exceptions that I don't think are pronounced really almost anywhere for those exceptions. Yes, exactly. Yes, like some people say warsh. So there's like, what do you say, Washington or Washington? So I would say that like as humans we drink water, and there are some people that'll say like it's almost like water. And some other, there's also some other really weird things. Funny enough, I have so I'm a strange person. I actually really am interested in language. I've actually spent a decent amount of time studying language, and somewhere in this room, I've got it moved around right now because I'm moving stuff. But I actually have old radio, like essentially like NBC back when they did radio, for example, here in the U.S. They had basically their handbook of pronunciation, and so I do actually have like books literally on pronunciation that are about ways to say words so that they are clearer. So if you are talking on radio or any kind of medium like we are here, you want to try, like, as fun as it is to use language, like so specifically the area I'm from, we actually have some words that are not used anywhere else in the world, where we are the only ones that use a handful of words, and I know that those are ones that we're the only ones that say. And so I try to avoid using those on stream because other people won't know what I'm talking about. But I specifically try to speak in a way that allows more people to understand. Is it in a code editor? Yes, I do study programming languages on stream as well. Okay, so let's jump in and keep doing some refactoring. So we pulled that code out so that target is hit by the modifier instead of determining. So instead of the attacker figuring out whether they hit you, we're going to have the attacker figure out how good their attack is and send that to the target to see if it was a hit. You lived and worked in Glasgow, Scotland for contract once, and people say that that accent is hard to understand, but you never found an issue with it. Took a while to learn the slang. Yes, yeah. So slang is actually one of the things that really takes a lot of effort to pick up, because especially when there's an accent involved. Because if you decipher the accent reasonably well, the problem is if you didn't know what the words even were because you don't know the slang, it then throws you off because you're like, wait a minute, I can't even like. Because when you do hear something and not understand what it says, your brain's like trying to figure out like, what was that I just heard? But if you don't know the slang, then even trying to do that, like, it's like, wait a minute, I can't make sense of this. So, yeah, it happens. Okay. I kind of want to make this. So, I guess it'll be void for now, and we'll call it inflict damage. Damage total. And it will be hit points. Minus equals the damage total. We don't have anything that modifies how you receive damage yet, so essentially we just need to say target dot inflict damage, and then that is our damage total. So fairly small change, but what we did is we made it so that the other character object is not what is attacking, is not what is causing the damage to us. So we've sort of switched it around. So you do damage to yourself, like the well. You mark your own damage, might be like you record your own damage. That might be the better way to describe it. You think the industry is heavy on code katas, and we need more agile katas to teach PMs how to properly write work items. So the funny thing is, I used to run workshops on Agile back in the day, where we would do what I would probably call like an Agile kata. Now, most of the ones that I did are focused specifically on Kanban style of things, so it is designed with more focus on like workflow and throughput understanding, and it also helps give people an understand. Like, I did a lot of stuff to try to get people to understand the concept of Slack. So Slack is one that I think a lot of people don't understand because they focus too much on making sure all the developers are working on as many tasks as possible. So making sure there's this giant backlog of work assigned to every individual. And like even among organizations that are agile, they still do that. They still have this idea that we assign tasks to people and make sure they've got this huge backlog, so they've always got stuff to do. And the problem is, like, if you actually look at throughput at all, that doesn't get you anywhere. You think a Scrum Kata would be fun, especially the planning poker stage? Yeah, so planning poker is a weird one. I've always, so for sizing tasks, I've always been a fan of the t-shirt concept. And if you don't know what the t-shirt concept is, I will explain. The idea is that I don't like points because people start equating them to stuff. So I like t-shirt sizing, where you say, yeah, that's small, that's medium, that's large. And you could say, like, that's extra large, for example, if you really wanted to, but I don't recommend getting more specific than that. And the reason why I say that is that you can tell someone, well, so think about the way that you wear a t-shirt. From most companies, I wear a specific type of t-shirt, but I happen to know that there is a specific t-shirt company, Shirtwoot, for example, that I wear one size larger on their shirts, or depending on how it's cut. And so this is one of the reasons why I like t-shirt sizing as the explanation, because when some people hear t-shirt sizing, they start going, okay, so if a small takes about a half a day and a medium takes about a day, then I can start equating all of these things, and I can be like, okay, that's how big these are, and they can start calculating and trying to figure out. And I'm like, whoa, stop trying to figure it out. Like, nope. Don't figure out what that size means in number of hours. That is not how we're doing it. Once you start trying to equate that to hours, it doesn't work. And so how our 8-hour developer daily hours in work items requirement was terrible, and the developer can't realistically do even 6 hours a day of actual development. And one of the executives told the trainer that he shouldn't let the CEO hear that, and then warned the room never to say that outside of the room. Well, also that's someone that doesn't understand that I can work an 8-hour day and a 2-hour day, and sometimes get more work done in the 2-hour day than the 8-hour day. And so the idea of measuring hours on things is just crazy sometimes. Yes. So the reason I like t-shirt sizing is I've gotten plenty of clothing that had a size where you try to put it on and you're like, this feels like a completely different size. And so the idea is, if I said that this is a small task, and it turns out that it was cut too big and it's a medium. That's totally fine. If, a medium task turns out to be a large or a small, totally fine. It was just not cut right. And so you get the idea that, like, your expectation when you say, like, yeah, it's small, medium, large, extra large, it's like, yeah, or we could have been totally wrong and it could be the other one. So you can't equate them. And don't even, and I wouldn't even worry about that. And you can get the idea that's like, yeah, this seems about the same size as this other one, so we'll say they're both mediums. And I would recommend that teams use that. So I like sizing as a way of helping someone to prioritize. And if they're getting into, like, well, this number of hours, how many tasks can I squeeze into this week kind of thing, I think you're focusing on the wrong part of the problem. So yes, exactly. And so the problem is, the real challenge is that too many people try to equate both the points or the size to a number of hours, and that's when you run into problems. Okay, so we did a little bit of refactoring. I like what we did with that. So jumping back into this code, we have these pieces. We've changed how our interaction between the objects works. We need to gain experience. So when a successful attack occurs, the character gains 10 experience points. Do we have that yet? We do not. So somewhere in here I need experience points. So I'm going to create a property that is just an int with experience points. Again, we had the discussion a while ago on the stream about the concept of, like, int. And yes, I am aware that an int will allow negative experience points, but it's fine. Extra small, small, medium, large, extra, yes, E-films, that's a lot of t-shirt sizes. You had a question on line 43. Where does the 1 come from? Oh, it's on line 44 now. This 1. That 1 is in our, that 1 is just our description of how to do damage. So, when characters can be damaged, so when they do, they take 1 point of damage when they're hit. And then down here we say, so you add your strength modifier to the damage dealt. So right now the damage is just 1 and plus that. So Telux, the reason why I'm not using an unsigned int is because that adds some additional complexity, because C# is built around the concept of int being like the basic number type. So I can easily use an unsigned int and it'll work just fine. And it'll get me twice as much number space. I'm not planning on getting into numbers in the billions for the experience anyway, so I'm not terribly worried about it. That and the requirements have not told me whether these numbers, like, the requirements have not told me yet how large the numbers get, or whether they can be negative. For all I know, it's possible to get negative experience. And so I'm trying to not really make any assumptions on that. So for now, I'm just using a regular int and not worrying about it, because it's pretty much the default for storing numbers in the language. So, and until I hear otherwise, then int. Why not? And if a requirement does say that they can't ever be negative, then I'll put that in. And maybe I could unsigned int. It's easy to change. Okay, so the character gains 10 experience points when a successful attack occurs. Okay, so that means if we hit, we get experience points. So and yes, I am going to put in magic values because I suspect that this kata is going to tell me where these come from. So if I do extract out the variables for things like that 1 of the base damage, I have a feeling that I'm just going to end up getting like a weapon, and I'm going to change it to the weapon damage or something like that. Which, realistically, if we were stopping at any point, I should refactor it. Like, you are correct that I should refactor this weapon damage out into a constant that is like base damage, and I should name it base damage at minimum, and then this should be a replace this occurrence of the number 1 as a constant on this that is like minimum damage. Minimum damage. I think I spelled that right. Okay. So that's the... it could get calculated at some point, so why not? And that... this could get extracted out as a method, and I could say, like, yeah, we'll extract a method for this, and say, you know, roll is crit. And then that just becomes a way of essentially hiding it away. And in this case, I would not bother extracting that magic value, because the method itself has basically defined what that magic value is in this case. Adding the constant here does not buy me anything. Like, it does not buy clarity in understanding the code, and that's what's important. Okay, so at this point, I need experience points plus equals 10. And so this could be extracted as a constant as well, and we could call this experience gain per hit. I did not create that correctly, because I meant to put it up here as a constant, and I didn't pick that when I was creating it. Now, creating them as constants on this class is probably not ideal. I probably should put them in somewhere else, but again, as I said, I am highly expecting that this kata is going to have me equip weapons and other things like that. Bagra, that is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. I should clarify that, because there are going to be well, I was going to say non-C# programmers, but I should say non-C# programmers, as well as C# programmers that are not up to date on the latest features of the language. So this code right here is the exact same as this code. Now, when you run it, essentially this symbol here, this equals and greater than sign that make this arrow, that we usually call it an arrow, whenever you see this in C#, this usually means that we are creating some kind of an expression. Like, I'm going to say lambda expression, even though that's not 100% the case, because right here what I've created is called an expression-bodied method in C#. And this essentially is saying that instead of having a full declaration of a method with a bunch of lines of code and these curly braces and everything, if I can write my method as a single expression, an expression is like an individual piece of like executable stuff in C#. A statement is the full line to the end, like is a full like line, like logical line all the way to the semicolon in C#. An expression is a smaller piece. So this is basically saying, instead of having a full body, like statement body of a method here, I can do all the code in a single expression. And so this essentially is just automatic, like my expression is automatically executed and returned is the concept here. So this is like one statement. So I can do one statement for the creation of this method is the idea. So it's just removing curly braces. So since these lines are so small, I can make each of these a single line, and I don't have to like fully break out the curly syntax for it. Would you say it's equivalent? It's so if you're used to that, so if you've worked in JavaScript, it's kind of like the arrow in JavaScript as well. We use it because we don't use it just here either. We also use it in what are called Lambda expressions. So I can create a Lambda expression right here that is, I don't know, this, essentially. This is an action X. And so I could say X. And this has created a method at this point that I can then just call. And so that's kind of like, they do a number of things. So if I had a return value, for example, I could say that it is a function that returns back an integer, and I could do this, for example. So then X just returns back the number 10. So I could say var 10 equals that. And so then this is actually going to get the integer 10 in it. So it's a way of defining those. And I could also pass in values. So I could pass in the roll, for example, and say 10 plus the roll. But then I need to modify what this is. So it's an int. But that's kind of the idea, is that I can pass these in. And actually, I need to do that because reasons. But that's the idea, is that I can essentially just create these methods out of nowhere if I want to. So it can be all return types, Bagra. All return types. Yeah, Zalvixin, you could think of it as a return, but it's strange to have to define it as a return on a void method, for example, because you can also do it on a void. It does not have to have a return value. Okay, that was a nice C# aside there. Hey, Shark Dude, you made it. Welcome. Yep, but hopefully that made sense. If it still isn't totally clear, feel free to ask a follow-up question, Bagra. I don't want to leave people sitting there wondering. Okay, so that is just experience gain, and I'm okay with this one because this is my same class that is doing this. Now, I could still break out a helper method that adds experience if I really want to, but I'm not as worried about that one. So I think that's going to work. Let's go ahead and do this. So did I set the value here? No. And it's defaulting to 0, which I'm going to be okay with. So the couple of things that have come from this. So experience is going to be 0. So I'm going to check that. So character experience points should be 0. So I have a method that's just making sure that we have default values. Realistically, you don't really need to do that test if you don't want to. That's just to make sure that it is initializing and setting the values if there are defaults for it. In this case, our default is 0, and I'm not going to bother with the failing test for that one, because the failing test would basically be like, did it compile? And I could put in a failure on it, but I'm not worried about it. That's not setting it. Now, we are changing how attacking works. So attacking is supposed to give us experience. So we're going to go down here and say public void attack should give increase attacker experience on hit. Okay, let's go ahead and I guess we'll theory this, because the parameters I want to pass in are this. I want to have I guess I'll put in real values, so I will say, well, I'm going to say Boolean for whether it's a hit or not, and we can actually then just say, so this will be a hit. Actually, we said this is on hit. Yeah, no, I'm going to do it this way. So this is, so we're going to do this. So we're going to say start XP. and expected. So I've said this is a hit. So all of these are going to be on the hit. So character, attack, new character, with a roll of an 18, we'll say, which should hit the default character. So and that will tell me that it was a hit. So I'm going to say should be true, because these should always be hits. So if this ever fails, then the test condition is wrong. And we need to fix this value here. Additionally, I need to set the character's starting experience points, which I'm going to do like this because I'm currently allowed to, and if I ever go back and make the experience points private, I will have to make this at the initialization, at the creation of the character setting their experience points. And then lastly, I want to character experience points, say, should be the expected result. Okay. Is there a defeated method indicating that the target creature has been defeated? We can check to see if it's dead, I think, Tealox. We haven't been asked to do that yet, though. Just saw you test class naming convention, and you think you're going to steal the Zelvik City? Yes. I usually do some variant of this. Sometimes it's close to the method or it's a concept that I'm testing. I like having, like, you know, this should something, and then say what I expect to have happen. You can also, for your test classes, if there is a condition for them, you could say, when created, character should, and then you could do individual tests for, like, that sort of thing. So you can break those out, and you can also use, like, there's a lot of ways of structuring your tests. So when I mentioned earlier on that when you're writing your tests, it's really important to think of them as, like, remember, your tests are real code. And so coming up with good naming and good structures and how to compose them out of additional objects that can help make them work, or, you know, have like a base class or something like that, although I'd keep that minimal. Again, composition over inheritance. But the idea is that you can create structures that are going to make your tests easier to maintain and easier to understand and work with. Okay, so clearly this test is failing, and the reason it is failing, as we expected it to, is because we haven't written the code. So we expected experience to be 0, to be 10, excuse me, but we found 0. So let's go ahead and go in here, and we're going to add in the code that we stubbed out in the beginning. So we're going to say add the XP. And someone might be saying, well, why did you make sure it failed first? And the reason why is because that's a good way of determining that I changed the correct code, that I was really checking the correct code. So sometimes when we write things, we think that we're checking a value that we're not. So being able to see that the test can fail if it's not working right is very important, because if you can't see the test fail, you don't know that it can fail when it needs to be telling you that something's wrong. Is the inline data an attribute for the testing framework? Yes, Jason. It is for the testing framework. It is not a custom one that we've added. The XUnit framework includes a collection of, I need to be careful with the word. They have a handful of different ways of parameterizing the tests, essentially, to add test cases, as it were. Other test frameworks like NUnit, for example, they call theirs test cases, and they work a little bit differently, but the concepts are the same. Is there a reason you go with XUnit versus MS Test? Oh, see, that's funny. Now you mentioned MS Test. So I've worked with MS Test in the past, I've worked with NUnit in the past, and I've worked with XUnit in the past. When I switched to .NET Core from .NET Full Framework, a lot of years ago now, the team that was building it was using XUnit when they first started with it, not NUnit, not MS Test. And so specifically, I think it might have been the ASP.NET Core team, they were using that, and I was like, okay, maybe they'll push that as like the default one. So I will use that. And so I used XUnit for a while. I've used XUnit and NUnit both on our stream here. I've worked with them in other projects as well. I like them both. They solve the exact same problems. They're a little bit differently. And to be honest, it really comes down to which one do you prefer. If you want to use NUnit, use NUnit. If you want to use XUnit, use XUnit. And it's really just when you see someone using the other one, you just need to translate in your brain a little bit and just be like, yes, I like. If you're seeing one that you're not familiar with, I should say, that you can just translate it, because this is just a test case. Yes, you know how the test works and you trust it. Yep. Yep, there's no inherent advantage to NUnit, XUnit, or MS Test. They all solve the same problem. Now, specifically, people may have noticed that I do use the ReSharper test runner instead of the Visual Studio one. That is actually for a lot of specific reasons. I like the way that one works a lot better, and specifically the time to initialize and run the tests is much faster in ReSharper than it is in the built-in Visual Studio one, and has been for a long time. Now, the Visual Studio one has gotten better, but it is nowhere close to this one now. So I'm going to add a couple of extra test cases to this just to confirm that this does indeed work. 3 is probably enough. So I just want to confirm that yes, it's really adding 10 every time. Again, that's really simple code to test, but also really simple to add the test cases. No reason to avoid them, if you ask me. Okay, because they're not adding any brittleness to this check. If we change the value from 10 as the increase, we just need to figure out how to tweak it so that the test is correct. So the test will need adjusting if that logic ever changes. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is the character can level. You want your experience points to be able to increase your level and combat capabilities so that you can bring vengeance to your foes. Yes. All right, so level defaults to 1. So character should have default values. So we are going to add in level should be 1 at character creation, and prop int level. Now for this test, I am willing to let this one fail to begin with to tell me about this. Blood, death, and vengeance. Exactly, Guy. That is correct. Do you have a recommended linter? That I would know which one I'm using? No. Over in like VS Code, for example, I have whatever plugins it is that I've got installed, and I have to go look it up. I love the suggestion in there. I don't have strong preferences on any of those things. It's like, yeah, whatever one I happen to have on any given installation, like whatever. Also, something interesting that I don't know if anyone ever noticed, but if you take a look at the glowing the lights that I have around here, they do actually give off a glow. I don't know if anyone ever actually noticed that, but if you look, I do actually make them glow. They're not just a colored bar. They glow that color onto whatever's next to them. So you had a ReSharper subscription, but you had to stop using it because it just ruins your VS performance in your code base. Yes, so very large code bases, you might have to disable ReSharper on. And yeah, yeah. Yes, the test runner in Visual Studio is unbearably slow. You start it and you just kind of a few, like some versions of ReSharper back, their test runner broke. When I think Visual Studio changed something, and then ReSharper test runner just stopped working. I don't know what was changed, but something happened. And until I got that VS update, I didn't have ReSharper, and I had to run the Visual Studio test runner. And I was like, oh, good, they've finally done a couple of improvements. They still need to work on how they show test names, results, and other things. But it's like, but they've gotten a lot better. But the problem is, like, you start up the tests and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait and you get no feedback, nothing, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then it starts running. And when it runs them, it's fast running them. But it's just, you sit there waiting for it to even start. I don't know what it's doing. But it's like, come on, guys. Like, how are you going to encourage people to do TDD and run their tests when that's the case that they get? Okay, so we need to default these values. Was I setting them up there or just putting them in here? I'm just going to set this one up here to 1 to begin with. When I decide to, like, if we need to start creating characters that start at a higher level, we can tweak that if we need to. Okay, so level should default to 1. We'll run this just to confirm that I got it. I'll just watch it on the side. After 1,000 experience, the character gains a level. Got it. So it looks like every 1,000 experience points is the next level. So, funny enough, you could almost make the level be a calculated field at that point, based on experience. So let's go ahead and we're going to take this to create our leveling mechanics. So public void. So character should have level based on experience points. Int experience int expected level, we'll say. Okay, so that's going to be our test. This is going to be a theory, and this theory is going to have some inline data that is going to look basically like that. So we're going to say inline data with those values. And then we're going to say that. Close it up. And there we go. So, couldn't you do mod 1,000 since there's a factor? But yes, Telex, that's exactly what that is. We are, so we can't do modulus. We actually want the reverse of that. So we do not want the remainder, because that would give you giant ones. You just want to do integer division and drop the remainder is actually what you want to do. At least that's what my plan is. You'll see in a second, but yes, your thinking on that is perfectly right. Just the wrong word for which one to do. Who did you put equal in your character construction? Oh, Bagra. Yes. Sorry. Let me explain that. So, this actually has been in C# for a long time now. Funny enough, this was something that after a presentation that Scott Hanselman did, where he specifically pointed out that he saw someone type this after the feature had been in the language for literal years, that you could set a property like this. And he commented that he didn't even know that that was possible. I realized I need to start doing workshops, not workshops, I need to start doing conference talks where I tell people the stuff that's already in their language and is cool. So what I started doing was taking basically things that had come out recently in the language, basically the coolest stuff in the language from the past couple of versions, the cool stuff that came out in the previous version, and the cool stuff that was, slated to come out later. And I basically made a talks for conferences where I would basically say, here's the cool stuff that you should be using that you might not know has been added to this language and is there and is available and is awesome. And it was funny. I started getting like rave reviews about these sessions. It's like, yep. And all I'm doing is telling you about, like, because the cool thing is, you can do this now. It's the problem with like language talks where the focus is, here's what's coming in this next version that you can't use yet for like another year, and then it's until your company lets you use it. And it's like, wait a minute, that's a terrible talk. Like, there's no takeaway. That's like a, hey, next year look forward to this. And it's like, oh okay. That's cool. I mean, it's useful. Let's get some discussion on it, and if it can encourage some people to try it out. But realistically, most of the developers at this event are not going to go grab that version and try it. And I'd probably be better off getting like feedback from them as like the session instead of that. Thank you to both of you for those follows. Welcome to the stream. And anyone else that's in here and is enjoying our conversations about C# and the code while we work on this, feel free to jump in. Bagro, to answer your question, essentially what this does is this just assigns that value, and this would be the exact same as if I had put this in my constructor. Equal in your constructor. Yeah. I don't think I added any in my constructor for those, unless you're talking about these. I can explain if you're talking about the ones that are on these parameters in the constructor, let me know that you're talking about the parameter ones. If you were talking about the one on the property, then hopefully I answered the question. This is the same as if I had written level equals 1 in the constructor. That's the same code, except that I don't have to put it in the constructor, and I can just write it here instead by just setting it equal. So whichever one you meant, let me know, and I'll cover it if I missed it. You practically have to hit your coworkers with a bat to get them to update Visual Studio, and also use features that would be... Yes. There are plenty of developers that don't want to try out the new stuff, and I'll sit there and I'll go like, you really need to try these new things. They're actually like really nice, and people are like, but it's making C# complicated. It's like, yeah, it makes it a little complicated to have all these other options, but it's still a pretty easy language, and for most of them, they used concepts that we already had. So we've had if you're not from C#, you may not know Lambda expressions and things like that, or if you haven't yet spent the time delving into LINQ. But LINQ is what the great thing about LINQ in C# is that if you used any of the essentially the fluent syntax like dot notation of LINQ, you were forced to learn Lambda expressions as part of that. And so what's nice is they introduced LINQ and Lambda expressions at the same time. So it was like we both put in this great language concept and used it immediately, so it encouraged people to learn it. Oh, that's actually awesome, Warren. I didn't know Bill was doing that. I'm going to then accuse him of stealing my talk idea, because I know that he was in my talk the first time I did that one. But no, Bill's an awesome guy. I love Bill. He and I actually attend a lot of the same conferences regionally. He's a really good guy. He's very smart. You should actually go check out all of his talks. They're fantastic. He's a really good speaker, and he knows C# way better than I do. Code Live, welcome. Thanks for that follow. You're talking about the equals and the parameters in the constructor. Okay, so these are default values for parameters. So whenever you have a parameter in a method in C#, doesn't just have to be a constructor. If you set it equal like that, what that means is there's a default value. So anyone calling this does not need to specify the charisma, the intelligence, the wisdom, the constitution, the dexterity, the strength, or the alignment, or the name. So because I've set values for them, that means that if someone just calls new character, which I do in my tests somewhere, they don't have to specify it. So for example, new character, if I do this, you saw the constructor. There is no empty constructor over there. The only constructor is this one. So I went to definition, this is the constructor. So because I didn't pass in any values, that means that this character is getting a name of name, they're getting an alignment of neutral, they're getting a strength of 10, a dexterity of 10, etc. If I want to change any of those values, I can specify that the name of the character is Bagra, for example. And I could set his alignment to good. His or her alignment, I guess. I have no idea. 14, 12, 8. And you see, I can just set all these values. And I could stop here, and that would leave the wisdom, the intelligence, and the charisma at their default value of 10. And I can just specify values as I like. Alternately, at this point, I could say, well, I don't want to specify the wisdom or the intelligence. I want to specify the charisma. I could specify the charisma as, 7 or 17, for example. And I can essentially do a named parameter there as well because I set all these defaults. So I don't have to pass them. They're all optional parameters at this point. So because I changed code over here in the test, I'm going to run them again just to make sure I didn't break anything. But hopefully that explains those. That talk is on your playlist. Where did Bill give that talk? I should check it out at some point. Regionally, I've been since, I don't know, 5-6 years now. A few times a year at least, I give talks at conferences talking about basically that is actually the exact thing that is my talk. It is using modern. It's basically, here's all the cool stuff in C# that you should be using. It was an NDC one. Okay, I'll check it out, Warren. Thanks. There is a question. Since these defaults are going to be baked into, does anyone have a dependency on the class? So yeah, I'm not terribly. I think if you just look for the name and Bill Wagner in NDC, so London. But I was just gonna say, if you're already searching for Bill Wagner and NDC, it should just come up nicely, I would expect. Okay, so character. Let's just set the experience points equal to experience points, since we're still allowing ourselves to do this. I'm gonna say character.level should be expected level. No. Expected level. Okay. So now someone's going to say, what's going to happen when you take away the ability to set experience? Well, or if we have to have levels trigger or something like that, we'll probably have some kind of a method for gaining experience. And when we have a gain experience method, if we ever get to that point, then I'm not worried about it. So that's sort of my, why are you setting that property that's dangerous? It's well, because I kind of know that if I'm going to change it, I'm going to change it in such a way that I can still do this kind of thing. Even if it is you don't have to change it so it's we'll initialize them at a certain level and then increase it up to that XP or something like that. So we'll figure out a way to do it. You currently study C#, so you can ask some basic questions that everyone knows the answer. No, don't worry about it. So that's one of the things I said is, even people that use the language every day don't know all these features necessarily. They don't know all these things. Every developer is always learning development technique of something. So never be worried about asking questions here. Never, never, never. You can always ask us questions. Let's do one extra check here just to make sure that is the cross point. That will still be level 1. And then this will still be level 2. 3 and 4500 should be level 5. Okay, so these are my tests for the experience right here. Just to check the level. And this test, obviously, I expect to fail. But we'll see what happens. Okay, good. So it fails. So the cool thing is that 9999 still worked because I didn't quite hit level 2. So the level 1 ones are the only ones that work because level is not calculated right. We just defaulted it to 1. So I'm going to change this from being a property to being an expression-bodied property. So that means that this is essentially a get only. So this, written as a statement, is the same as this code. So if you see the way that works, I've got the return right up there. It's I'm returning a calculated value. So that's all that my expression body is doing, is saying return back the value of the expression. Exactly. We're all still learning all the time. So this is 1 plus experience points divided by 1,000. And I'll remove that magic number once we get the test working. And all of those constants I'm creating, we really need to yank them into some other place. So there we go. Code seems to work. So tests pass in doing that. And so that's what I was saying is we're going to divide. So let's just make sure that people understand how that code worked that I did that, because it's a little bit weird. So I did... I'm leaning on integer math here. So when you divide integers, the result is an integer, which means that I cannot have decimal places, so there's no fractional result returned. So 999 divided by 1,000 is 0. But 1,000 divided by 1,000 is 1. And 1,999 divided by 1,000 is also still 1. So the idea is that I'm basically making it so for every 1,000 you've got, we only return back one extra number. So that, and then I add it to 1. The 1 I may not bother pulling out, but this I will pull out as a constant, and I will call this constant experience per level. I think that makes sense. So experience points divided by experience per level, plus 1. And since I changed the code, we'll run these tests again. Which I guess I could run all the tests instead of just, the subset, but I'm not worried about it. Okay, for each level, hit points increase by 5 plus the con modifier. Okay, so this gets into the other thing that we were running into. So here's the other refactoring that I wanted to do that we did not quite get into in our last stream. The refactoring that I want to do is to change how we deal with hit points specifically, because we tracked hit points without having a maximum and a current one. So that's where we're going to do this little tweak here. We were planning on this last time, but we haven't done it yet. And so now we're going to do that refactoring because we're getting into the point where we're actually supposed to use them. And so we even discussed that when we added the con modifier to hit points, that it was like, okay, we're going to need to change how this works because we're passing this value. But we didn't yet. We just said, hey, we'll just wait one more stream. We'll do it next time. So here we are at the perfect time to do a little bit of refactoring work. You really like this language and you want to learn a lot about the things of C# during your holidays, and you really like how I explain. Oh, I'm really glad you're enjoying the stream, Bagra. I do try to explain something. I really enjoy teaching. I come from a family of teachers, funny enough. So I really enjoy teaching and programming, and I think they're awesome because programming empowers people to build stuff with like whenever they want. They can build anything with programming. It's an amazing thing that the concept that humanity has created, these computers and programming. It is wonderful what our communities do. So yay, welcome. Does this mean you are constantly calculating the level now? So Telox, yes. So if someone wants to, but only when someone checks our level do we have to do it. That being said, the level is not all that critical. It's we could record it if we wanted to, if we were worried about performance or something like that. You're absolutely right. We are calculating it every time. Won't it like technically maybe it could have a performance hit, but if that is a performance hit we're worried about, then we have another problem. We're doing something else wrong if that's a performance hit. So if we really wanted to avoid that, we could have experience gained and be observing that value and trigger a change to the level. We can absolutely do that more complex structure. But yes, as Guy mentions, transistors are cheap and programs are expensive. So the cost to do a division calculation like that is like so ridiculously small that almost like the lookup of the pointer to get to the next value is almost as expensive as doing the division to check that. Like, I mean, we're talking such minor little things that calculation should not cost us anything in terms of performance. This calculation, the fact that that's a property that we had to go through that has to get loaded onto the call stack again is worse than the fact that we did a calculation. Okay, I need more caffeine. All right. So now? Okay, let me explain what I'm wondering here. I am thinking about doing our refactoring before I make this next change. So let's do the refactoring first, because we're at a good point. All of our tests are passing. Just to confirm, let me run all the tests, and they should still be passing. Good. Tests are still passing. So the next thing that we want to check, I talked about how we were storing the hit points. So we stored them... Yes, I love that response. On a modern CPU and modern framework, it probably already knows the value. Yes. It is like... The cost of that is also so minimal that no need to worry about that. Something else will be your bottleneck, almost guaranteed. I recommend to people when talking about performance stuff, this obviously is going to depend on what you're programming. If you are programming something that needs like really amazing performance, yes, you need to focus on all those minute details. For pretty much everything else, performance is about avoiding the bad things more than optimizing all the little stuff. So it's like, don't reallocate giant collections of data and things like that. It's like, don't do large calculations repetitively. So don't do operations on collections within a loop, for example. That's the type of stuff you want to avoid. Exactly, yes. And Simon hit on one of the other big ones is a lot of times it's accessing your database, calling out to an API. It's reading stuff from the file system. It's some kind of external thing that is going to be your biggest hit. So if you're calling a database in a loop, for example, that is going to destroy you, and you should figure out if, like, yes, exactly, yes, it's levels of magnitude difference. I was doing some performance optimization for a client just a couple of months ago. What month is this? Yeah, a couple of months ago, and most of their performance problems were database issues, and so I fixed all of the database issues to increase performance. But then even when I did that, something else wasn't working. I was like, and so I started monitoring. I was like, oh, now that I've gotten rid of that bottleneck, I can actually see another one that was a problem, which is that a calculation that could have been done outside of a loop was being done inside the loop, and so we only needed one value from it, and so it's like, okay, we'll just extract that up out of the loop, and so you don't do that literally like 10 million times, and it's like, oh, there we go. Now the funny thing is, you go like, wow, it was doing that 10 million times, and I'm like, yeah, and it was still only adding like 10 seconds, because like it doesn't take like, and it was a slow operation, but it's like, but I removed 10 seconds off of the execution time by pulling that, because like that's like, that's the sad part, is like, it's like, that was just a mistake. It's like, yeah, that just needs to get moved somewhere else, and it's fine. Which is why I point out, like, all the little stuff you don't need to worry about. Yes. And yes, memory leaks are definitely a potential problem. But yeah, this won't end up being a memory leak, because there won't be any references to leftover values and things like that, and garbage collection will pick up any newly assigned values and things like that. So yep. Your average mobile phone has enough computer power that you rarely need to be bothered with computational performance. Yes, exactly. Yes, if it's going to be running on a desktop or a laptop, you don't need to worry at all. And even on mobile phones, it's not really a huge deal. Again, it's more about don't do the really bad stuff rather than optimizing away calculations. Okay, so let's refactor our hit points. So we have hit points, and we need to change this. So this is going to require a little bit of rework. I'm going to make current hit points. I think. Or should I record damage? Ooh, maybe damage? Exactly, Guy, because there's two ways to do it. You can either record the amount of hit points you have remaining or the amount of damage that you have sustained. And the thing is, because I haven't read ahead, so I will tell you in advance, which I have never done this kata. I know of its existence. I've seen people do it. I haven't really looked at that, and so I don't know what's coming. So if he's going to add in things like temporary hit points, or who knows, like I don't know what might be coming in the kata. Like I don't know what features the game designers might come up with that we're going to need to handle eventually. But right now, I need to decide: am I going to handle damage or hit points? And the thing is, it's not a huge decision. I'm just going to decide on damage right now because I think I can do it this way, and I think it'll work nicely. But if we get requirements that make me go the other way, it's easy to change. So, yes, exactly. What happens if the Constitution changes? Exactly. And so that's why Guy has actually brought up a significant point, which is that if the Constitution changes, do my hit points automatically go up? By recording damage, that's what's going to happen. So that is, by making this choice, I am making a decision about how that works. But I don't have instructions explaining it. So this is some of the weirdness with katas is that and from especially from someone that is giving this as a workshop. See, I get these same joys because I run the same kinds of workshops as this one, of watching people try to figure, because no two team ever nobody ever comes up with the same exact solution that someone else did. It can be close, but there's always like some variance that came up and that someone made something a little bit differently. So I'm going to keep track of damage. So essentially we said hit points less than 0, but I'm going to say if damage has exceeded the hit points, that you're dead. I think is the approach I'm going for. So let's go ahead and jump to wherever I was reducing hit points. Which is going to be down here. That's setting the hit points. Which, interestingly, I think maybe I'll make hit points calculated instead. We'll have to figure that out. Inflict damage. So instead of reducing the hit points, I'm going to have the damage be increased. So damage now increases based on that amount. So I'm going to break some tests when I do this. Hit points can now be calculated, I think. I don't think you need to set them anymore. And we're going to find out in a moment. So I'm actually I'm going to take a little bit bigger jump than I usually like to. Constitution usually decreases damage taken as well. So yeah, depending on your systems, things can do that sort of thing. But yeah, so like if your Constitution decreases, the total should decrease, which in my opinion should be able to get you dead. So we'll see what happens. So this is what they're going to add on right here. So this is what we're looking at, is that's going to adjust hit points, but I don't need to do that yet. This is going to be my hit points instead. So that is just going to be the hit points. We're just going to take that and set it there. I'm not factoring in level yet because I haven't written the test for that. So we're going to do that feature in a little bit. Okay, so I'm assuming that I've broken something because I probably set hit points somewhere. but we're going to find, or maybe I check them somewhere. No, tests still, okay, so let's see if the tests pass. So I might have checked hit points somewhere, whereas now I'm going to need to check damage or something like that, or maybe remaining hit points or current hit points. So Bagra, thanks for hanging out. By the way, just so you know, there are video recordings of this, so any part of my stream that you miss, you can check the video section here on Twitch to see the rest of the video. And I also post my videos over on YouTube a couple of days afterwards, so if you check our YouTube channel and subscribe over there, you can also find our videos there afterwards, as well as all of our videos going back years of streaming on this channel. So, okay. So expected the hit points to be 0, but found 5. Yes, so this is exactly what we expected. We figured when we made this change, we would have some tests that needed to change as a result, because we looked that hit points should be 0 and the target should be dead. What this tells me is that I need to change how this works. So we're saying that hit points shouldn't be 0. We're saying that damage should be the target hit points. So these two numbers should equal instead. So that should indicate that they've taken all their damage and they are dead. And the follow-up meta question is, should you even be allowing those assumptions to influence your development, or should you write completely to the spec? So I do think that you should allow a little bit of knowledge of the domain to help you make some decisions. Now, let me explain, because that is a fantastic question. The types of adjustments that I like to make to that are this. I like to think what is likely to change, and you can let experience guide you, because no matter what your design, you always have to decide which things do I expect to get stories about, and you usually know what that is from a programmer's perspective. For example, I recently was working on an application where we had automated checks on the work that was being done by users. And when we designed that, we only had 2 checks that were going to happen. So I could have just hard-coded to those checks and not worried about it. But what I knew was coming at some point is there were plans for additional checks to happen. I don't know what those checks are, so that means I did not build a system that had like infinite flexibility in what could be checked, but I certainly made sure that all the code was ready for the fact, was working with collections, because it needed to understand that we would be getting more checks. And in this case, it means like almost validations or confirmations of things. So it's like, I don't know what they are. I don't know how the checks themselves are going to need to change or anything like that. But I know that I'm going to have more showing up. So, yep. And yes, you can refer to the stakeholders for that. So I got from my stakeholders the fact that they were going to be adding additional checks. And so that's what I knew from them. And so, yes. And yes, as Guy mentions, this is a workshop, so you're supposed to be able to ask Guy or George, either one, as long as they're not getting distracted by that annoying guy running the workshop next door. At which point, they're not available to answer questions. That was a joke, by the way. I would have been the annoying guy next door, just chatting with Guy about stuff. Did this not work? Did I run this one and this one didn't work? Is dead to be true, but found false. Ooh, that's interesting. Did I not adjust this? Liquid Surge, welcome. Thanks. I don't necessarily. I might have butchered your name, but either way, welcome. Thanks for that follow. Much appreciated. Welcome to the stream. Oh, thanks, Guy. I appreciate it. You're so nice. Is dead. Is checking hit points still. Okay. So you are dead if your damage is greater than or equal to your hit points. Yep, see, I had not adjusted the is dead property yet, so now I need to adjust that, and we will run these tests as well. And now we'll see what happens. So notice I'm just taking it some tests at a time. So this is trying to check the expected hit point amounts, but I should check the damage instead. So we'll check the damage. So instead of checking the hit points, so this was, so it is 5 minus 4, right? So we're saying the starting hit points for this guy was 5. So I'm going to put this in here. Now someone's got to be freaking out right now. I'm waiting for someone to freak out, and I'm going to show you some magic that I think is going to work. It's going to be really bad when I try to pull this rabbit out of the hat and it doesn't work. But magic time. First off, let me run it. Okay, so the test passed. Now someone's whose eyes are bleeding? Whose eyes are bleeding? Come on, admit it. Admit it. Compute constant value. Compute constant value. Compute constant value. Oh man. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Look at that magic. Look at that. Was that not awesome, or was that not awesome? Yay! Really ugly thing is gone. So what I could have done was I could have just gone and like figured out in my head, like, okay, so if this is listing a 4, then, and it clearly started at 5, then I know that the value must be 1, because that's how much. So like I could have just done the math in my head, but I knew that the values in that parameter that I'd passed in were all whatever the value was I expected to have, coming off of 5. So it's 5 minus that number of hit points is how much damage had been taken. So, yep. Math. Okay. Are we... what's still... I think there's still some tests failing that we need to get. Let's run them. 9 tests still failing. All right, let's have a look. So we've done a big refactoring, so I was expecting a bunch of tests to fail as a result of this. And it's mostly just going to be that we're checking hit points. So expected hit points is what's going to be on there. So damage target on a hit roll. So, again, we're going to say 5 minus that is going to be expected damage. And we're going to say, ooh, I need to adjust my previous test. I didn't do that. There we go. So there is our, we've switched that from hit points to damage. I think it was an attack should, yes. So I wrote expected hit points. I need to change this variable name. That's expected damage. So always try to, fix up your code. So the math thingy, Mutt Money, that is So the compute constant value trick that I used there actually came from ReSharper, funny enough. So that one's not a default in Visual Studio, but to that point, the case that I will make to everyone is that I knew that my tooling had that ability for me, so I leveraged that in my thinking and how I approach the task. You'll also notice that I do those kinds of things where I will extract a value out. So I'll write the code and then extract the value. I'll extract out the method from it, I should say. Rather than creating the method, I will put the code there and then extract it, because that is just the way that I like to think about solving the problem. If you solve it better by pulling that out, do that. You use Writer. Yes, Money, it should be there. Yes. Writer should be able to do the same thing, but that's the point that I usually try to make to people is find productivity tooling that you like. Try some of it. There are extensions to Visual Studio and VS Code that you can add in, both free and paid ones. I know a lot of people that swear by CodeRush, and I've used it as well plenty of times. It's fantastic. I'm currently using ReSharper in here, which again is a paid product, but you can also use Writer, which is their IDE as well. I forget if there are like pro and non-pro versions of any of their products and things like that. But either way, the point being that it's really important from a developer standpoint. Find tools that you like. The extensions exist regardless of what language or framework tooling you use. There are additional things that can help give you productivity, and you want to try to learn them. Funny thing on that one, I used to, whenever I work in an organization, I usually tell everybody that, hey, if you don't have a preference, we're just going to get, ReSharper or something like that. And I recommend that everybody learn all the keyboard shortcuts and everything like that. And so actually what I have them do is I have them literally print on paper the keyboard shortcuts for all the common stuff that they're going to use so that they can learn them. And it's really valuable because you then don't have to take up screen real estate. You don't have to look at it. You just glance down at the sheet and you literally just like tape it below your monitor. It's like, just check that while you're learning it for like, X amount of time. You did something, you extracted a method, you did something, and you're like, there must be a shortcut for that. And it's like, yep, there it is. And you'll learn all kinds of things. They've got like surrounds with, where you can just hit a keyboard shortcut and it'll be like, oh, surround this with a switch statement, surround this with a try catch block, and it'll, do all these things. It's really fancy and nice. Money, thank you for that follow, much appreciated. If anyone else is enjoying the stream, be sure to hit the follow button, as the best way to get notified when we go live. Also change the check precondition. Change the check your precondition? Renee, I'm not sure what you were saying there. CodeRush has a built-in window that will tell you what you could have pressed to do the thing you just did. Yes, it does. It has the... Yes. Yep, that is one of those really nice things. I remember that it was basically... It's designed as like a help you learn kind of thing. I have been friends with Mark Miller, who's one of the guys. He's like, I don't know how I would describe his role in line 63 in your test. I don't know how I'll just highlight so I know to look there. I don't know how I would describe Mark's role at DevExpress. He's like, he's practically like the role that Mark seems to serve at DevExpress is basically Mark. His job is to be Mark Miller. And he's an awesome guy. I've known him for years. And he's very learning focused and things like that. So I would not be surprised if he were the person that came up with that concept for them to have there. Someone turned off my lights. How long have my lights been off? Turned them back on. There we go. Okay, so line 63, you said target hit point should be 5. You're correct. I should say damage should be 0. Good catch. Thanks, Renee. See, that's why pair programmers are so useful. Pair programming. It is the best. Why didn't this run? Oh, because it was in a different... I did not run everything. Let me do this. Whoops. Click the wrong button. That's what I get for using a mouse. That's what I get for using a mouse. Now it's debugging. Yeah, I didn't want the debugger. Thanks. Didn't want it. All right. So again, damage should be 0. We're gonna need to do damage instead of hit points again. Damage, and this is going to be expected damage instead, and then this is going to be 5 minus. Okay. And then we're going to shift those. So the other neat thing, if you haven't been watching, I'm actually just using the default, like, do something keyboard shortcut in ReSharper to get those. And those exist in Visual Studio as well. But one of the things that's really fun is they also built in these. So, like, I can change that to a hexadecimal number. Or if I need to write it in binary, I can write it in binary. And I can actually even say to separate out the bytes. So, like, if I did have a number that was in, so, like, I don't know, big number equals, that number, right? Maybe we'll go a little bit smaller. Right? So there's my big number. I can make that hex. I can make that binary. I could say separate the binary bytes. And so like this is what I mean when I say like leverage your tooling. They can often do these things. Like if I were figuring, if I were like counting out all the spots to be able to put those underscores in, that's just a pain. Or if I need to remove the digit separators, I could separate this out into the into the words here in my hex. So put it back in decimal. It's super nice for that. So all the tooling we use, they have a lot of these features that, again, we were saying the same thing with the language. Dig into them at some point. You're gonna love them when you actually start digging into all the crazy stuff that your tooling can do for you. All right, so I'm sorry, did I get all this test passing? If I did, then cool. If not, I still have like one left, right? Got him. So that was the last one right here. Expected damage. Damage should be 0. Yay. Okay, so now I want to go and say, I want to add this feature. So for each level, your hit point should increase by 5 plus the con modifier. So 1 is added to attack roll for every level achieved. Got it. So there's 2 features here. So we're going to start with the first one, which is characters' hit points are based on the con modifier. So that's going to be character should. Public character should have hit points based on level. And I'm not going to specify the con modifier. I'm just going to kind of like that like is it's going to be checked in the same test, but I'm not going to put that in the name because elsewhere we said it's based on that con as well. So inline data, so level 1, we expect him to have a level 1 with a con of 10. We expect 5 hit points. Int level, int constitution, and int expected. We'll just do expected. Okay, so character experience points equals level times character. Wait, what? Did I not? Oh, did I? Oh, I made it. There we go. Experience per level. So at level 1, we'll have experience points for level 1, and then I will say character dot constitution equals constitution. So there's setting our initial values, and now I'm going to say character dot hit points should be the expected value. This first one, I expect this to pass. So you are correct. So that's actually the one that should fail. Thank you, pair programmer. Level 2, we're expecting, with a constitution of that, we're expecting to have 10 hit points. Since we've already checked the con for the base, I'm not going to check level 1 again. But now if we have a con of that, I'm expecting to have... Wow, this looks bad. There's 14. You lined these numbers up in such a way that it looks silly, guy. Okay, so that is a correct amount. At level 3, And that we should have 21. Telox, glad you enjoyed the stream. Thanks for showing up. I know you've been here before because I recognize your name, but I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. Welcome. Okay, so now these tests should fail. We're expecting these to fail because I wrote some new conditions that we have not handled yet. Okay, so we expected 10 but found 5. We expected 14 but found 7, and expected 21 but found 7. So all that's not happening here is we're not factoring in the hit points based on level. So we're not essentially multiplying by level. Easy enough to fix. So that's our new feature that we have developed for. So hit points are going to be math, the maximum value of either 1 or 5 plus the constitution modifier. Ooh, that's a good question. Negative, is that 1 per... I'm going to assume that... hey guy, question. Is that 1 per level? I assume. So if I have negative constitution, are my minimum hit points 1? Or so like if I'm level 3, I have 3 at that level. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm that. I assumed that, but I was like, I should check, because technically you could say the minimum is 1, and it's always 1. So until you gain enough levels to get out of your negative modifier, you're still at 1. Would be terrible. That would make a negative con one of the worst attributes to have. Yes, I'm a 15th level. No. It wouldn't be 15th level. You'd get out of that after... No, you never would. Yeah, you never would. You'd always have only 1. No matter how many levels you gained. That would be awful. Because you're always multiplying your con modifier. That'd be terrible. Okay. I mean, terribly funny for that wizard that was totally going to die. Okay, tests. Let's run all the tests. How you doing, tests? Are you passing? I hope you're passing. Passing tests, yay! Alright, next piece on this is, for each level, 1 is added to the attack roll for every even level achieved. Guy, I'm gonna smack you. Every even level achieved. Okay, attack should... Public void increase attack roll modifier every 2 levels. Not huge on the name, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. The half attack progression from 3rd edition. Theory. Inline data. So what do we want to have here? Increase attack roll modifier every 2 levels. So now, I can do a test that confirms that the attack modifier gets factored in, or I can do tests that just calculate an attack modifier, depending on how I want to write this. There are a handful of ways to go. He said every even level. 1 is added to the attack for every even level achieved. So that means actually the first level gained is valuable. So that must be 3/4 rounded attack modifier is what Guy is talking about, which is what he's referencing for his 3rd ed thing. So that's essentially what he's created here. It's like it's like rounded down or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna do this every even level. We won't worry about it. All right, so that's level. And Oh, I kind of want to just do a piece that calculates the modifier. I think I'm going to do that. We're going to do that. So I'm going to put it on the character. So character should increase attack modifier every 2 levels. So level 1 should have a modifier of 0. Level 2 should have a modifier of 1. Level 3 should have a modifier of 1. Level 4 should have a modifier of 2. 3 at 6. And at 7. Which, yes, I know that I didn't put all of them in there, but just putting some examples, and yes, you could instead write this as like a range and do calculations, but I like hard coding in a handful of values. Int level and int expected modifier. So we're going to say character I'm going to make this a little helper method for now. Set level. Taking in the level. There we go. So set level. It's going to take in the level. That'll be a little helper method that we'll do. And actually, I want to extract this as a parameter on the character. And let's switch those parameters. So we're going to change the signature, and we're going to switch them around. So set the level of the character to that level is going to be a little helper method that we're going to have, because I want to do that here as well. So in our test, we're going to set the level of the character to the level specified, and then we want to verify the attack modifier. So character, attack modifier, should be expected modifier. Camera class. There. Getting something in line. Yeah, okay. So attack should increase. One of these has an attack modifier concept in it. Just attack roll by the strength modifier. Here we go. So this we're gonna need to. This we're gonna want to change as well. Okay, so let's go to our character, because we don't have this new concept I just created. Attack modifier is not a thing. So this is like the modifier we use on our attacks. So let's create that. We're going to say int attack modifier. And this is going to be calculated as well. And this is going to be calculated based on something, which for now it's going to be the strength modifier. Okay. So the attack modifier, I'm going to actually rename this. I'm going to call this the attack roll modifier. And you might be saying, wait, aren't you supposed to be adding level? And I say, yes, I am. But first I need to get that test failing. So the test can now fail, but not for the right reason. So I want to adjust our other code first. So right here, roll plus strength modifier. I'm going to change it to that. And I'm going to run all the existing tests. And actually, before I do that, comment out this test. That's the test we're creating. Now, the reason why I'm commenting that out is that's the new test for the feature we're creating, but I'm in the middle of a refactoring, so I need to comment this one out and make sure that I don't break any of the existing stuff. So since all the tests still pass, I can be fairly confident that I have not changed the behavior of how attacking works, because we already had code for that. So effectively what I've done is I have pulled out the concept of an attack modifier by putting this here. So this is a calculated attack modifier, and you go calculated, Brendan. All you're doing is putting like, this is just a property. It's like, yeah, that's just the property for now. That's fine. But I can now adjust this by changing this value. So now when I put this back in, the attack modifier, right now 0 I think is going to work. I will add some tests for the actual attack as well to make sure that we get it right. But I want to put this in here for the details of calculating the attack modifier. 1 but found 0. Yep, that sounds right. Expected 1 but found 0. And this one passes, so that's where level 1 was okay. Alright, so attack roll modifier should be... Oh, and actually, you know, I could do this just to be absolutely certain. Character dot level should be level. Why not throw that in there just as a safety to make sure that I set the level correctly? So every test is going to have that assertion to make sure that this code is always working as expected. So if anything breaks this code, there is an assertion that will tell me this code is broken. And yes, you can, in your helper methods, put in these assertions like this to make sure that you don't mess anything up. I highly recommend it if you are doing any assertions like that. Because you want to know what breaks your code. If a test fails, you want to know why it failed. And that is the best way to check that one. Okay, so attack modifier needs to factor in the level. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to say every 2 levels. So I could just divide by 2. Level divided by 2. And I don't need these parens, but I'm going to do it anyway. Well, level divided by 2. We won't. It's level divided by 2. I think that's right. We're about to find out if that's right. Hey, welcome. I'm gonna say Kin because you joined our Discord at one point, but I don't remember how to say that name. But welcome to the stream. Glad you're here. And for anyone that doesn't know, I was mentioning our Discord. That is a chat program where you can chat with me and the other viewers of the stream. If you are so inclined to chat with us outside of the stream, that is how you would do it. All right, so that seems to work. Let's extract out that 2 that I hard-coded in here. So we're going to pull this out as a constant, and we are going to call this attack modifier increases every levels per attack increase. We'll pull that out as well. And these are all going to live somewhere else. I just haven't decided where yet. Renee, you can actually, you don't need the exclamation point to change that color. You can just type it. And sadly, I spotted the fact that you were trying to hide my lights from me. Kin is fine. Good. Most people tend to go with that. But yes, it's really easy because I'm not sure how that one's pronounced. The funny one, so as you can see, I always point out to my name when I begin my stream to let everyone know that, you know, I'm Brendan and I host the stream here. But my alias, Brendonius, a lot of people have questions about how to, like, when I'll show up to a stream and I'll say Brendonius, I'll get things like Brendaneus or Brendanus, and it's like, yeah, no, I totally get it. Like you can guess, like, but no, Brendonius. That's how you say it. It works. I have not hasn't coded the wizard class yet. Techno wizard, yeah, no, there's no wizard class yet. I haven't dealt with classes yet, which I think is the next thing. But I want to get one other little bit on here, and that is, I want to make sure that I want to confirm that we're really using the attack modifier. Which actually, maybe I should go to the test about, yeah. All right, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, but CY55, I'm guessing, and Scaling, thank you both for following the stream. Welcome to DevChatter. Glad you're enjoying it. So welcome. Thanks for those follows. And in case anybody's wondering, that weird picture that shows up when people follow, that is literally a picture of me walking off a cliff. So it's kind of like a follow the leader kind of thing. So like, you know, you like following me as I walk off the cliff. I thought was really a good joke about following me on the stream. And the part that's really going to shock you is that photo is photoshopped, but I'm actually standing, like, that rock is not, and that really is a cliff. It's the background that's changed so that it's just like that open, like, sky view there. That really is a cliff edge that I'm standing like 2 inches from the edge of. It doesn't, like, from the perspective of the way the photographer was taking it, you actually can't see how close I am to the edge, but there's literally a cliff that you could fall off of and die, and I'm like 2 inches from it, so it's nice. Like, it was a great photo. Watching a YouTube video of yours and I pause to come follow, and you're live. Hey, welcome, Scaling. Glad to see you made it. Take care and enjoy watching the video. Okay, so adjust the attack roll by strength modifier. Okay, so I want to change, so 2 things. I want to go calculate the attack modifier based on strength. So I'm going to take this concept and move it over to character. So we're going to shift this over here. We're going to say adjust, so we're going to say, so to match with this, I'm going to say increase attack modifier by strength modifier. Increase attack modifier by strength modifier. So instead of checking the roll, I'm just going to check the strength modifier. You know what? Maybe I should just put them both together. No, that's so specific to every 2 levels. Okay, I won't worry about it. So we're level 1. We won't need a second character on this, so we shouldn't need that. We just need to say underscore character attack modifier should be the expected value, which is going to be an int. Okay, so at this point they're basically just the modifier values. That's funny. Okay, so the strength of 1 is going to be a -5. Strength of 2 is going to be like a -4. 20 is going to be a 5. 12 is going to be a 1. Increase attack modifier by strength by level and strength modifier. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. These are all level 1. So we'll say int level on the strength, and then that's all of those. So now let's duplicate, and we're going to have level 4. So I'm going to increase all of these by 2. Whoops. compute constant, and compute constant. There we go. Okay. I don't know if I actually finished that, but I'm going to run the test all the same, because I like just running the test to find out if things are working. Okay, so expected that those values, those are the strength modifiers, those are the levels, so increase attack modifier by level and strength modifier. Looks good. So this is checking adjust the attack rolls by strength modifier, but I want to change it to say by attack modifier instead, and also factor in level. So int level. Now here's where I need to get this helper somewhere else, because to start off with, and I recommend everyone do this, always copy pasta and then extract out the duplication. And I'm not kidding on that. I really do mean do the copy and then look at what's the same and then extract it up. It's one of the reasons why when we talk about like the mantra of test-driven development is red-green refactor. The refactor is important. That's what makes it so the thing you did, if the copy pasta or something else, isn't bad. Because right now the copy pasta is bad, but it's the idea that as long as you come back and refactor it, then it's not a problem. So set level on the character to level. And then we'll say character strength is going to be the strength, and then the adjust attack roll by the attack modifier. Yes. So that should all be the same. So down here, if I make this like this, I can make that true as long as I make that 2. Strength of 20. So what's the AC I'm trying to hit? Is it a 10? I'm trying to hit AC 10, it looks like. So I could make this level 10, which would give me a 5, a strength of 10, and I could roll a 5, I think, and then it would be true. Let's find out. Let's run it, take a look. Good. Okay, excellent. But just to confirm that it is absolutely using my code. So again, I recommend people do this. Try just break your code temporarily and try running the test. Just confirm that they fail. So I'm going to go back to those ones specifically we were just working on, and they should be failing. Okay, so these are failing, and specifically the ones that are failing should be whoops. Yes, it's the ones that factor in the level. All the level 1s worked fine, because that's the code I just removed. So remember I told you, make sure you can get the red. That's to make sure that your test really can fail. That's what I was checking there. So this should increase, and the level 1 should be fine. Yep, the level 1 is fine, but every other level's broken. And on this one, the level 1s are fine, and the level 4s are broken. So, yeah, break your code. Yeah, I do that all the time. Yeah. No, what I mean is, like, make sure your tests can fail. Because I wrote these tests, and they were just passing. I have no confirmation that they really can fail until I make them fail. And in this case, I started with working tests, and I changed them to account for a new thing, which means I need to make sure that they can actually fail when not accounting for that new thing, because I wrote the code for one thing and then I added additional tests to further check. And so people are like, wait, then you needed to do the red part of your red-green refactor. It's like, well, I did for the initial creation of it, and then I need to adjust again to add that into the next part. So you need to remove it again and add it back in again. So that's an important step, is making sure that you actually do that. All right, let's rerun the tests, and then everything should be good. Should be golden. Should be golden. Excellent. all tests passing. Okay, so at this point, I mentioned that we want to do some refactoring. So let's take a look. There's definitely some code that can be refactored out. So this set level, for example, you should get pulled somewhere. So I now have the option. I now need to decide, okay, do I want to make this an extension on a character? Do I want to make this a base class that, you know, all of my tests inherit from? I have a couple of approaches. So I could make it so that there's a base class, like an abstract base test class. That's one way to go. I'm not going to go that way, but that is one way to go, and it works just fine. So if you like that structure, do it. Absolutely works here. In fact, I do recommend doing it if you're going to have shared properties. That is a great way to make sure that, like, oh, I need to keep track of this sets of properties because, like, they're all going to have a character, for example. Absolutely. In this case, this is so small that extracting it, I am not really worried about. There's no logic to it. It's just I create one. Now, if I start having like special defaults on the character, I am either going to create a helper somewhere else that creates the character that I'm going to use, or that could get extracted into a base class if I need to do some other setup-y stuff. Instead, I'm going to do this. For now, I'm putting this in the test class because as far as I know, I don't need this elsewhere. But anything that I create for my tests to make it easier could eventually get extracted out as part of the code itself and does not have to remain living only in the test class. So we're going to show a cool thing in C# that not everyone necessarily has seen before, called extension methods. And I'm going to call this character extensions. Extensions. I use this convention for my names. I always put like I group usually by type or concept, and I put extensions on the class name so that everyone knows that that's what it is. No one will ever call this by the class name. They'll never see it, so it doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter that that name got kind of long, because no one will call it that way. So if you haven't seen the extension methods in C#, prepare to have your mind blown away, because it is neat. So set level. This, and already someone should be like, wait a minute, what this why are you putting this in there? Int level. Okay, now let's go back to attack should. Now technically, since I am in the test code right now, I can keep that that assertion in here because we're still in the testing class library. Public static void set level on this character, and so the weird thing that's going on here. First off, I made a static method, and static method in C# means that it is on the class and not on an object, not on the instance of the class. So it is not on a character extension object. It is on the character extension type. However, that's not how we're going to call it. So I could call this by saying character extensions dot set level and pass in the character and the level. Sure, totally works that way. I can absolutely do that. But that's not a neat feature about C#. What I want to do is I want to say set level to the level. And you go, wait, what? There is no set level method on the character object. It doesn't exist. This is what an extension method lets us do. So we have sort of tacked on a method to our object to just use when we want to. So that is kind of that is essentially what we built here, is the ability to do that. Really, really neat. So let's go and get rid of the code. So we'll get rid of the method, and we're going to say character.setLevel, whoops, .setLevel is now what we're going to do instead. So we no longer have that code in here. And then in this one, we also don't need it here. So we're going to say character set level. Yep. Character set level and character set level. So now I have extracted out that method, and it lives over here in this nice little spot that knows how to set levels. So this concept of like doing the multiplication times the amount of experience points, totally hidden from this test, because for any one of these tests that we did this in, where we set the level, the thinking at this point should not be, like, anyone reading this test should not be concerned with the details of how levels are achieved for a character in the game. You should be thinking at the level of level. You should be thinking at the layer of abstraction of calculating hit points, not levels. That doesn't matter at this moment. We're thinking, how do hit points work? And so the idea is, well, at this level, not thinking, how did I create it? Not this number of experience points. We're thinking at the concept of a level. So it's a layer of abstraction different. So we don't care how the levels were created at this moment. So we don't want to see it. Let's run all the tests, make sure I didn't break anything with my refactoring, because I pulled that code out. So easily could have broken everything, or it could all still pass. Excellent. Yay. Okay. Let's have a look over here now. One is added detectable for every even level achieved. That's actually a pretty good spot. Maybe I will it's a good question. Well, in that case, I think I'm gonna, roughly speaking, wrap about here. A couple of things I want to note, so don't go anywhere just yet, because I do want to talk about a couple of things before we break, and that is, for one thing, I want to make sure that I toss out some links into the chat. So first off, we are going to be doing a few other things this week. So I'm intending on doing some weekday streams this week, but we'll see how my schedule works out. So there will be weekday streams. That is the plan. Normally we stream in the Eastern time zone on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 2 p.m., 2 p.m., noon, and 1 p.m. And roughly speaking, in UTC time, so you can translate if you want, that is 1800 UTC on Mondays and on Tuesdays, and it is 1400 UTC on 1600 UTC, brain work, 1600 UTC on Thursdays, and 17 on Saturdays. So if you look at your clock and subtract 2 hours from whatever time it is right now, that's our Mondays and Tuesdays. 4 hours gets you our Thursdays, and subtracting 3 hours gets you the one for Saturdays. So a couple of things. So we're probably going to continue on with this kata at some point during the week, but it will not be the only thing we work on this week. I also want to do some of the work on our Interactive 7 application, which is the it is the program that we build that adds Switch interactivity to our to Final Fantasy VII, which is a little over 20-year-old game. It's like 22, 23-year-old game that we are allowing Twitch streamers to give their chat the ability to manipulate the game while they're in the middle of playing it. It's hilarious fun to see that all happen. We will be working on that some, and I want to do some other streams as well. We might work on our chat bot a little bit more as well. So expect some Twitch chat interactivity and a little bit more of this. Other things I want to note, I'm planning on trying to do a guest spot on Guy Royce's stream at some point. I've been meaning to. There was a time when we were going to do it, but it didn't. But it happened that it wasn't going to work for my schedule. But we are going to make sure that happens sometime soon. I'm probably going to be on a guest on another stream as well, so make sure you're looking forward to those. And yes, I need to tell Guy when I can be a guest on his stream, which I'll probably be a guest on, Guy, surprisingly, I think the Fridays work better for me than the Mondays, but I don't know about the content that you do on your Fridays versus your Mondays, so we should chat about that. But either way, and yes, exactly, Ken. Interactive 7 is quite awesome. Yes, it is. It is quite good. Okay. Last things that I wanted to mention. If you haven't clicked the follow button and you enjoyed any of the stream that we did here today, I really recommend that you do click it, as it is like it's really the best way to make sure that you don't miss the streams. And then I'm also going to toss out links to our GitHub where you can see the source code. I'm going to push this up after the stream, so it'll be there as well. And then our YouTube has full archives of all the videos that we've done here on the stream over, years of streaming here. So feel free to check those out. And I'm going to toss my Twitter links over there as well. And all this information is down below the stream in the panels also. Which you can't necessarily see or click on if you're on a mobile device, but I happen to know from the stats that most of my viewers are on computers, PCs and laptops and the like. Okay. Last thing I want to make sure that I do is run our credits to make sure that I thank everybody for everything. So thanks for hanging out with us today. I want to be sure that I thank our moderators who were here for the stream to help us out. So Guy Royce, and I know S&B was here at one point as well. So thank you both for helping out to moderate the stream today. I want to thank all these wonderful people who followed us today. So if you are one of those people that clicked the follow button, thank you very much for clicking that. And I look forward to seeing you on our next stream. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. And I also want to make sure that I thank House Bazook for resubbing to the stream. So thank you everyone for hanging out. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's going to be a good one. I will tell you, if you watch enough of the live coders channels, I will be on someone's live coding channel this week. But I'm not going to tell you who, so make sure you're checking out the other live coders as well. And you will see me for a brief appearance on one of those streams. And if you do, be sure to let me know that you saw me on that stream, and I will get a good laugh about it. So take care, everyone. Happy coding. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Later.